when I talk with people, and it's, like I say, we're conscious every day when we wake up, right? There's a bazillion people walking around conscious and they're not growing and they're not changing. It's the awareness as well. How am I showing up as a person? How am I showing up as a dad? How am I showing up as a mom? How am I showing up as a human being whose body's going to stop at some point? What's my belief after that? What's my accountability as a human being in terms of my actions? That's, to me, that starts to be the awareness side. And I think when you live in that side, my opinion, as I understand it, everything gets better. Everything. Job, health, relationships, because you realize that we're all in this together.
Many men can make a fortune, but only some can make a family.
Right.
So what do you mean by that?
It's cool. Jay, it's great to be here. Thank you. I saw that quote years ago and I forget who it was attributed to. But for me, it means that when they talk about fortune, not necessarily money, for me, I make it more about the world, career, job, some of those other things we might pursue as men, as fathers, as husbands, versus the focus is really on the family, your partner and the children that you're blessed with through that union, I think is what that quote tells me. Yeah, you got to go out, you can make some money and, buy some nice things and create some nice experiences, travel and those things. Over here, partner, kids, my wife, Lisa, that's where the energy is first.
Yeah. So I think one thing to really talk about here would be a lot of our default positioning as men, as fathers, is to really hang out in that idiom of the provider protector. It's the natural default. It's naturally how we define ourselves. The first question when we meet a new man, either in the road, at a barbecue, at a party, whatever it happens to be, is, hey, what do you do? So let's, like, practically, we have this idea like, hey, have a family. How does that apply when you're introducing yourself, having conversations, or just how you're running your day-to-day life?
Yeah, in my conversations, I rarely lead with, what do you do? I think I did years ago. But for me, it's never really been about that. I graduated college with an accounting degree, which I never practiced. I went into medical sales, which I didn't like because there was a lot of rejection on being alone. And then I lived in Aspen, Colorado, and the New Jersey beaches and tended bar. And I was ready to go back to Aspen the day of my accident. I had a really tragic accident, maybe we'll get into. So that really changed the trajectory because I never thought I would get married. I didn't necessarily want to get married. So when I talk with people now, because I've been blessed with such a beautiful family, my own and certainly the extension of it, is, who's in your life, what makes you happy, where are you? More about them than what they do.
100%. And I think that's something that definitely feel good fathers out there can hang out more in that space of. I love the question by the magician speaker, Mr. Vin, right? If you had a day to do whatever you wanted, what would you do?
Yeah.
Before we get into that, because I think that's a great question, you mentioned that there was a pre-accident paradigm for you and what it meant for you, and then there's a post-accident paradigm. I'd love if you can talk about the details you want to share about what happened and the new decisions that you made.
Yeah. So the short story, my friend and I, Bruce, were lowering a ladder at the end of a workday in July of 92. I was almost 29. And I was tending bar and I was doing some construction with them and just trying to find my way, so to speak. And I had a girlfriend on and off who has ultimately become my wife, Lisa, of almost 30 years. But this particular day, we thought we were clear of the electric lines and we weren't. We hit them. I think the margin of error, Jay, was about an inch from the top, 28-foot ladder. So it was just one of those tragic accidents. And he and I were both electrocuted, about 8,000 volts in my hands and out my feet and my boots and my socks. And the other brother was on the scene. There were two brothers that owned the company. So me and Bruce got hit with the electricity. And Stu, the other brother, was up on the roof finishing up for the day. So he came down the ladder. And as he was coming down the ladder, I was yelling to him. I had an absolute calm and a peace. It was as if I knew I was dying. I knew I was dead. And I was yelling to him to get his brother. And then I was just pulled away. My spirit just left. I didn't hover over the accident. I saw him coming down. And then for me, I was joined with, what I call God,
Mm-hmm.
the energy. Some people call it source or consciousness or spirit, whatever else they might call it. But there's no question that when your body stops, there's that divine energy that does not. It goes back to its source. And I had a choice to stay or go. And
Okay.
we were kind of communicating, but not with words. I just watched a movie 2 nights ago, Miracles from Heaven with Jennifer Garner.
Sure.
Little girl had a brutal disease of her intestines were all messed up. She fell down into this tree and hit her head. And supposedly she hit her head in such a way that her brain now started to send those neuro signals back to her body, and her body got healed. And when this little girl fell into the tree, she described having this experience as well. And it was really cool because it was very similar to what I did. She said, you just had this cosmic conversation.
Mm-hmm.
God, no words. So I said, what about my mom and what about Lisa? This is going to kill them if I die at 28. And that's right when I was back in my body. And then I crawled up. Stu was working on Bruce. And I crawled up and Stu said, how are you here? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And then the paramedics came and moved us away. And I looked okay then. And I was up and alert. And then Stu came over to me and said, what happened? And I said, I guess we hit the wire. And he said, yeah, you did. I heard it. And I said, I know. I saw you coming down the ladder. I was yelling to you to get Bruce. And he said, what? I said, I saw you coming down. I was yelling. And he said, no. He said, you didn't say anything. So it was that notion of
Right.
thought I was still in this world trying to communicate with him, but I wasn't. He said he came to me first and rolled me over, eyes rolled back, foam all over my mouth, and did CPR for a few minutes, and then just gave me up for dead because it wasn't working. Ran across the street, called 911, ran back past me, and that's when he got to his brother. Yeah, that day I was ready to tell Lisa that I loved her, and I was going to go back to Aspen, Colorado, and live there full time and get my real estate license. And the next thing, you're at one hospital and your friend dies, and then you're on a helicopter to go to a trauma unit, and you're looking out the helicopter at your mom and dad standing at the side of the helipad. And then I get up to the hospital where I went, and Lisa comes in. I got tubes everywhere in the ICU, and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So certainly a bit of a trajectory change.
But what was the decision? Like, you came away from that? What was the thought beforehand and what was it afterward? What decision did you make after experiencing all this? There had to be some sort of discussion. You mentioned trajectory. What was that? What was the decision to trajectory? What did you intend in that moment?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think I came back from heaven or where I was because I expressed love. And I think that's the greatest energy. And I think that's the energy of God. And I think it's very important for us as human beings here to pay attention to that. Love is it. Love is the energy. And we all know that if we had more love in this world and all of us showed up with more love, we would have a lot less of the suffering that we have. You're always going to have evil in the world.
Sure.
God's not here to control the world. He's here to support us and help us move through it when those difficult times come. The trajectory, the change really was, I was ready to go out to Aspen and stay a bachelor, and I was fine with it. I just didn't know that I wanted to make the commitment. I guess I didn't trust myself with the commitment. Not that I ran around or all that kind of stuff. It was just like, wow, if you get married and then you have kids and then, you can't do stuff. Right? The beach in the summer and the mountains. And I thought, wow, now there'd be a whole lot more structure to my life. I'd probably have to get serious jobs, stay in one place, which would probably be near her mom and dad and those kinds of things. So the real trajectory change was I was struggling so bad after the accident, man, with the guilt and the loss, the pain of losing my friend. And I was mad at God. So my faith was challenged, and drinking way too much for all the wrong reasons. I kind of had that moment. My wife, Lisa, is a very strong woman, very wonderful, beautiful woman. And I thought, man, you know what? If I marry her, I'll have to get better, because I just sensed that I couldn't do it on my own. And she played a vital role in supporting me and getting better. And she wanted to get married. She wanted to have kids. So I always say I died in 92, I got married in 93, and I had our first son, Luke, in 94. And then I came out of my funk and I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, that is, I think that there's a lot of feel good fathers, and I always say this as well, that we aren't really confronted with the reality of being a father until baby one is born.
Yeah.
And I always, and I try to explain this to some people, especially new dads, when I talk to them, that it's intellectual beforehand, and there's a couple things happening here in the physiology, the hormones, all that kind of jazz,
Mhm.
in preparing for the moment. But for
Mhm.
me, it didn't become real until like I saw my daughter. I stuck my tongue out. She stuck her tongue out at me. We were stamping her feet for the footprints, like that whole thing. Like it
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
real until that moment. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, here's a life. Got to keep it alive. That
Yeah.
kind of jazz. So
Yeah. I
that,
think for me, the moment, and I always remember it. I just told Lisa yesterday because my mom and dad are still with us and don't live far away. They're 90, 93 and 85. And we picked them up, took them to dinner. And there used to be this old diner. They live very close to where I grew up. And it's not there any longer. And I said, Lisa, man, that's where. So I remember Lisa went into labor. We went in, she delivered Luke. I experienced that and my love for her deepened. I'm like, wow, that's
mm,
crazy in a good way. And then I left the hospital and I remember I went to that diner and I was good. I wasn't drinking bad then. I was better. This was, probably a year and a half after the accident. And I went to this diner. It was like 9 o'clock at night and I was just tired. And I went in, I had a turkey club. I love my turkey club sandwiches. And I had a Heineken. And that's when I'll never forget it, Jay. That's when it just hit me. I'm like, wow, man, I'm a dad. I'm a dad. It was a cool experience for sure.
you mentioned something that I thought is very common, right? That in pursuing the marriage and pursuing fatherhood, that you'd have to give up your freedom and impose structure and all these other kind of pieces. Your kids, they're older than 20, they're postgraduate. Like, how old are they?
Yeah, so we have Luke's 28. He lives in DC. He's doing
Right.
great down there. Joey will be 26, lives in LA.
Okay.
Doing great out there. He's pursuing screenwriting and acting. And Lizzie is 21. She's a senior at University of Pennsylvania. One more
Great.
year. Yeah.
So they're all out of the house, right? It's been 2 decades since
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
What structures did you put in place to be a great father, to have a great household?
I think I have to give credit to my wife, Lisa, for
Mhm.
doing more of the structure.
Sure.
I certainly, and both of us showed up with love for sure, Lisa and I. And I think early on, I was more the friend,
Yep.
especially when they were younger. And I realized, wow, that's not my role right now as a dad. I
Mm.
can be friends, and I am friends with them now more.
Yes.
That friend versus the authority figure.
Yes.
Really, and my wife did a lot of the structure. I would always hold them accountable just to be good people. Just we have a saying in our house: lead with love. If you asked anybody in my house, lead with,
Mhm.
they would complete love with t-shirts and all. So I didn't put a whole lot of structure in there. I think what I instilled mostly in my kids, probably, and Lisa did as well. I know it's a fatherhood podcast. Is I think I instilled in them faith in
Okay.
something bigger.
Yep.
Not so much the way that you practice it. Catholic, I go to church and they do sometimes, and sometimes they don't. But that faith to say, hey, man, my body died, and there's a part of me that didn't, and it's in you as well. And it's a really good part to be aware with. And I think love of friends and family, I instilled in them. That is very, very important. Certainly the message that you're going to screw up, and that's okay. Learn from it. Don't be afraid to say I screwed up. So they were a couple of things. And then of course you go after what you want. Don't
Yeah.
conform. I took jobs because I wanted to please my mom and my dad or whatever and major in accounting. And I didn't want to major in accounting, all due respect to our accountant fathers out there.
That's
But
right.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. So my mom said major in accounting. And I asked her, I said, give me one good reason. And she told me about my sister, who's the oldest, her friend who had just graduated college, got a job in accounting, and he bought a new Honda Accord. So I'm like, Okay, I guess accounting it is, Mom. You convinced me. So yeah, I think they were some of the things that I instilled, I picked up from my dad along the way as well.
What'd you pick up from your dad?
Faith, for sure, very strong faith. And he had to, he worked for the same company for a long time, and he had a couple of opportunities to do the entrepreneurial thing, and he didn't. And he worked for the company out of security to raise 8 kids, my sister and then 7 boys. And though I think I also got from him that, hey, if you want to go make something happen for yourself, go ahead and do that.
Before
You
we
don't have
hit,
to work for the same company forever.
I love the commitment angle. I love learning that. But before we jump further into that, you said something earlier that I want to poke at. And if you have an example, I'd love to hear about it. You said that you started being the friend, and then you stepped into father, then you stepped into the accountability, then you stepped into the authority figure. That's very common, right? We want to be playful, we want to do this kind of stuff. And I don't think it's unique to fathers. I think that's parents in general.
Yeah.
You have a specific example of what happened and how you knew that had to change?
Yeah, I am trying to think of specific examples here. It was more that Lisa and I would battle a bit
Mm,
because I was, you've maybe heard the term before, Daddy Disneyland, right? Daddy comes home and everything's fun, whereas Mom's doing the homework and the housework and everything else. And I think there was probably a series of instances where I was a little bit too lenient and not holding them accountable, because I wanted to be liked as a dad. Just some things early on, they get caught doing stupid things on the computer and looking at things that they shouldn't look at. There's some I don't want to be too specific with those examples.
I hear you.
I remember one time Joey's the middle one, free spirit, and he was outside. He would take over the baseball game in the backyard, and he was in charge and everything else. And I saw him once, and I ran out and I grabbed him and I carried him in. I don't know, he's 6 years old maybe. And I sat him on the bottom of the step, and I'm mad. And I remember that's where, okay, now he's grown into a little person, and he kind of was being I don't want to say bully, but he was in charge. You know what I mean?
Sure.
He's picking the teams, and so I bring him. I sit him on the bench at the bottom of the steps, Jay, and I say, you know what, Joey, I'm sick and tired of you. And he says, Dad, what? And I said, don't, you can't talk. And I'm screaming, I'm sick and tired of you, and you got to pay more attention to other people, not think about yourself and everything else. And I tirade for a couple of minutes. And I remember I started with, I'm sick and tired. And he tried to interrupt me, and I didn't let him. And then towards the end, and he says, can I say something? And I said, yes. And he said, you don't look sick. And I'm like, okay, so I guess my whole message was missed then if he was focused on this sick thing. Yeah, it was just, I think a lot of us, some of us come out as fathers. I've got some brothers who are fathers, and some of them go the other way, much too strict. And I was on the other side of the spectrum. Neither one, I think, serves the child well. It's just you got to dance with that. When can I be a little bit more of the friend? And when can I put up the guardrails and say, hey, these are the rules right now, and you got to stick in them. If you screw up, that's okay. Let's get back on, but you can't take another road.
If there was anything, any sort of wisdom in being able to detect when was the moment to put the guardrails in, when was the moment to allow the kids to be kids, is there anything that you were looking for that you could impart to maybe your younger self or to some other fathers out there? That would be
I
a good
think
example.
for me, it's behavior. I think our kids, I don't even think, I know our kids knew the difference between right and wrong. And you could get that sense when they were maybe struggling with something, or they had made a poor choice that maybe Lisa and I knew about, or we didn't. And we were blessed with really good kids who did make a couple of poor choices here and there. So I would always watch, you really want to watch your kids. You really want to watch their behavior, even now as they're older. But pay attention to that energy coming off of them. Tap into your intuition, and you can sense when something's off a little bit.
Do you have a moment? Do you want to share? This is really one of the things that I tell a lot of people and a lot of fathers is that, hey, as a father, you have instincts as well. As a father, you have intuition, and those things can either be built into your biology or, for as an example, one of your purposes as a father for a young one is to hold them and warm them up, but you will
Right.
develop an irritability when they get too warm, and it'll show up, and you'll want to hand off the kid because they've been heated up and you don't want to overheat them. But this is all subconscious. It's all happening in your head. And so there is an intuition. There is something built in. There is a paternal instinct.
Yeah,
But this
absolutely.
watching the behavior, that to me seems like a really interesting lesson. Are there lessons or are there things you can watch out for when steering your kids?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just who are they hanging out with? Are the people, are the kids a good influence? Or have they hung out with certain friends and now they're not with those friends anymore? You know what I mean? So usually
Yeah.
that's a disconnect. And I just try to pay attention to their energy. Are they smiling? Are they moping around? Are they getting along with their brother and sister? Are they getting along with mom and dad? And I think it shows up, I guess, when kids start to get 7, 8, 9 years old, when emotions become a real thing. I know they have them as youngsters, but when they become more of a real thing and their emotions are more connected now to the story they're telling
Right.
themselves about their life. Our son Luke, our oldest Luke, is gay, and I remember that whole coming out. Lisa and I sensed it, that was his sexual orientation. And then I didn't know this, but he had told Lisa first.
Mm.
And I was okay with that, but I didn't find that out until months later. And then we were down at the beach and he was coming down for the weekend. I guess he was out of college, maybe just out of college. And he said, "Hey, Dad, I want to talk to you this weekend for a couple of minutes." And so I knew probably where we were going. And then the weekend got there and he didn't. And I said, "Hey," he said, "Yeah, yeah, not now," or whatever. So I could just sense he was off, and it was a beautiful walk we took on the beach. And
Mm-hmm.
when he didn't even tell me because he couldn't, and I said to him, I said, "You're going to tell me you're gay?" And he said, "Yeah." And I just hugged him for a couple of minutes, and then we talked for like an hour, I think.
Mm. That
Yeah,
that's
I
interesting.
remember. Yeah, Joey, our son Joey, was at South Carolina for 2 years, University of South Carolina, and I could just sense that he wanted to get out to California because, as I said, he's pursuing acting and screenwriting and
Mm.
all of that. So you just, in your conversations, you can just sense, you know, what's happening. Lizzie is, they're all unique and beautiful in their own way. She's very type A, high achiever, and I can always kind of sense when she's not taking time to be still, which is one of the principles I work to, so that you can recharge and go be type A again. I got no
Right.
problem with being type A and having that drive and to-do list and everything else. Just recharge and then go be type A again. So I can kind of sense when she's a little bit off the rails.
Yeah. Now that they're out, right now that they've moved on to the next stage of their life,
Mhm.
how do you show up differently? How does the relationship adjust as my eldest is 10, Elise is 10. So now I'm like,
Mhm.
what's that going to look like in 8 to 10 years when she goes off to college, if that's her choice, whatever happens to be? What what happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's very unique to all the families and situations out there. For me, it's been more of a shift back to friend and really just understanding that I don't want to control them anymore. When they're
Right.
young, sometimes you want to because you really want to control their choices. And that comes through setting parameters, not giving them a car or letting them go out when they're 12 or whatever it might be. And I think the other thing for me, Jay, really is that, and it's a belief that I hold, is everybody's on their own journey. Everybody is on their own journey. So my kids included. I just be a good person. Be a good person. And if you want to go this way with your life or this way or that way, I get it. So it's more of the conversation to say, "Hey, if you want to know what I think, do you?" And they'll say yes. And I'll say, "All right, listen. So as I understand it, in my experience, here's what I think might be really good for you to consider right now, because you're 25 and I'm 57 or whatever. And I've got a little bit more experience. Now, if I was 27, and I might want to do exactly what you're doing because I ran around the country skiing and tending bar and having fun and everything else and didn't pay attention to jobs and careers and money. And then I got down the road a little bit and I'm like, oh, jobs, careers, and money. I got to pay a little more attention to that. So I said, I'm just going to offer you to really think about this and consider it. And I'm happy to support you whichever way you go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's good. How do you, this I think is a fun one. How do you navigate, or what have you done to help your kids successfully navigate sort of the dating world? This is today, it's a very interesting topic. When you and I were growing up, it was you go out, you build a community, and you meet people I guess what you would call the old fashioned way, which is just meeting them and having a conversation.
Yeah.
And nowadays there's tons of different ways that happens. But the desire is still the same. You want somebody with good character. You want them to be a good person. That's super clear.
Absolutely.
So what kind of comes up nowadays for the other fathers that have similar age kids?
I would just offer them, my kids, I said, don't bring home any jerks. Don't bring home any jerks. And jerks can go for straight, gay, it doesn't matter. Let's just take that term jerk and apply it to whatever the relationship is, and whether the person you're bringing home is straight, gay, female, whatever. Just don't bring, we got a good family here. We're made up of good people. We're not perfect. Find a good person for you, because that's what you deserve. Find somebody that they don't have to have all the likes that you have. Although I've seen relationships are a little easier when you have similar likes and similar activities. And you also got to have your independence in relationships as well. So they were some of the things. I don't worry about faith so much. You got to bring home a Catholic, or you got to bring home a Christian. I said, just bring home a good person that when both of you are together, for the most part, you feel pretty good. You create some joy. When you don't, you can look at one another, be truthful, and say, okay, how do we move through this? What can we do to get through this? Yeah, that's what I offer to them.
Awesome. I think that's I
don't know if they listen, Jay, but that's what I offer. They nod their head to me.
I still try to figure out whether they listen.
Oh man. Nah, I think they do now. When they get older, you'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lizzie is the captain. We're real proud of her at University of Penn on the cross country team this year. And over the years, the work that I do and similar work that you do with my writings and coachings and everything else, I've given her different acronyms and different ways to deal with anxiety before a race or any of those things. And she just told me last week, she said, Dad, I had to catch myself. I sounded like you. And I said, well, that's cool.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
And she smiled. She had a freshman on the team. I won't get into it, but say freshman. First big time trial coming up, University of Penn, Ivy League, Franklin Field. And like all of us, we would all have that anxiety, right? So that it's that energy in our body that can either be anxious and fearful, or it can be kind of focused and happy and excited. Wow, I feel a little worked up here, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Or I feel worked up and I don't know how to manage it.
I definitely just had this conversation with Elise where we just had first day of school. And so the discussion was, are you nervous or is it exciting? Because they're two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
And then I added in hey, the side that you pick, that's the one that grows. So if you pick the exciting side, you'll keep being more excited. You kind of thought about it and let it go. And we'll see what happens. I'll let you know in 5 years whether that sticks.
Yeah. I think it's important too when we're having, I guess most for me is when they were younger, teenage years, not so much anymore because we have some pretty good conversations. But when we were coming at things differently and the kids were maybe stubborn and talking over you or disrespectful in some way, when they were certain that age, I would just say something like, hey, you know what? I think probably the best thing for me to do right now is to walk away. I don't appreciate how you're talking to me. And I don't think that this way of communicating is going to get us where we want to go. So I'm just going to head out. I'll go upstairs and go to my office and do whatever. So I think it's okay rather than fight and demand their respect when they're 16 or 18 or 20 or I don't think we can do that, man. That you can't demand their respect. You got to behave in such a way that it's there. And
Yeah.
then again, if they're on their own journey where they're just in that world of disrespect, there's consequences. Again, and it depends how severe the disrespect is, and you might take consequences. You might take action then. But if it's just that they're just being the proverbial smart aleck, so to speak, to keep the language clean, I just let them go and let them sit with it. Most times they'll come back around.
That's interesting. I liked the idea here of the commanding versus demanding.
Yeah.
And I really liked what you said, the underline of that being, I have self-awareness enough in this moment to know that the argument is just, it's not going anywhere. It's just two heads button. It's an exchange of energy, which has some value, but it's not productive. It's not going to create any sort of your loving environment. That was your principle for the household, was like, hey, let's lead with love.
Yeah.
And that was really, I think, a great way to show a principle that you've instilled into your house and lead from the front, so to speak. What are some other pillars?
Still, let me just say though, Jay, you're still going to have those conversations. You're going to go at it with one another.
Yeah.
And as long as you're going at it with one another you might be emotional a little bit and a little bit heated, as long as it's respectful of one another. I think that's the key. When the parent or the child gets into that disrespectful mode, then I don't think it's you probably want to call time out and get out of there.
I know for me, there's been times where I've been off the hook, or even my wife Erin has been off the hook, and we've always circled around. And that's sort of what I wanted to ask. One question was like, when it succeeds, what does it look like when you're circling around? And then the other one being, what are other pillars? What other principles that you instilled into the house?
Well, with Lisa, a lot of times for us circling around, trying to get on the same page, again, we come at things radically different. We still do.
Right.
And the common core is that we love our children and we want what's best for them. And I think with your partners, I think you got to understand that if you do come at things differently, make sure that's there and you're aware of it, so that between that stimulus and response, there's that space. That's where we can grow. Dr. Viktor Frankl has that great quote. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning.
Yep.
He said between stimulus and response, there's a space, and it's in that space where we grow. And so you want to have that awareness, especially when you're dealing with the kids, and you and your partner, your wife, are trying to lead this thing in the right direction.
I love that. I love the understanding of the common ground. Was that an understood thing, or did you guys discuss what were these common ground principles for the house?
Yeah, no, we discussed it for sure. And we both had different lists. I think it was respect. I think it was be a good person. I think it was do the work, both in school, on the athletic fields, follow through on your commitments, respect your family, respect your friends, respect your teachers, respect the house, the car when you got to a certain point. They were the basic principles.
As a father, and as a shared father with other fathers that have younger kids, and so with younger kids, I think doing the work and following through is a little bit hard. I know it's something that I personally struggle with, is what would you tell me to help instill that sense of almost industriousness, just to kind of keep going, that perseverance, right? That's the do the work, follow through, is that industriousness, perseverance, not giving up. What did you do to make that real?
Yeah. Again, the telling is a tough, especially as they get a little bit older. Telling is not necessarily parenting or coaching. I think it's rather getting them to observe their behavior. Dr. James Flaherty said coaching is allowing them to observe their behavior, thinking, and action in light of their intention. What do you want to create for yourself? So I think as the kids get older, it's like, okay, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? What do you want to, okay, how are you thinking? What are you doing right now? If this is truly what they want to make the starting five on the team or whatever, what do you think somebody would do all summer long? Would they get up at 6, 7 o'clock? Would they go run? Would they do dribbling drills? Would they All right, what do you want? You want that car? All right, what'd somebody do there? How would they move towards that? I'm just trying to get into that. And I've had those conversations with all three of the kids, my wife and I as well.
I sense a theme of self-awareness.
Yeah.
In the way that you're presenting these concepts, in the way that you're coaching, parenting your children through. Is that something that's true for you? This
Yes.
self-awareness idea?
Absolutely. Yeah. Awareness precedes change, and awareness precedes growth. So if you don't have that, I always talk to people, want to be aware, not conscious. Because when you think about consciousness, and this is sometimes where people refer to the divine as consciousness, and I don't, that's not how I see it. That's okay if they see it that way. But consciousness, there's a lot of people walking around conscious. Their brain and their heart and their lungs and the five human senses are working. But there's that sixth sense. There's a movie made about it. There's that intuition. I call it spirit. So I call it divine. So the difference between conscious and aware is something bigger is going on over here. It's like when the divine is sprinkled on your consciousness.
And for those of you listening, the side was the aware side, not the conscious side that had the divine sprinkled on it. Just so that if you're listening to this.
Yeah,
that's what Danny was saying.
No problem. And that's when I talk with people, and it's like I say, we're conscious every day when we wake up, right? There's a bazillion people walking around conscious, and they're not growing and they're not changing. It's the awareness as well. How am I showing up as a person? How am I showing up as a dad? How am I showing up as a mom? How am I showing up as a human being whose body's going to stop at some point? What's my belief after that? What's my accountability as a human being in terms of my actions? That's, to me, that starts to be the awareness side. And I think when you live in that side, my opinion, as I understand it, everything gets better. Everything. Job, health, relationships. Because you realize that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Not kind of, we all are. That's the way that I see it. All of us human beings have a divine energy inside of us, and that's what makes our body go. Our heart, our brains, our lungs contribute, and it's that divine energy. Because I know mine left my body and my body stopped, and then for some reason it went back in, and now I'm working again. Yeah. And that's the side that I think is really, really vital for us to tap into.
Good stuff. Love the dichotomy there. Love that. Back to your parents, back to your household. 7 siblings, 10 people in the house.
Yes.
Had to be some interesting lessons, interesting things going in there.
Yes.
In particular, I'd really love to know, and at Feel Good Father, this is something that's discussed frequently.
Yeah.
What are the pieces of the legacy, the generational lessons that were really great to pay attention to be aware of? And what were the ones that you decided not to include, you decided not to pursue?
My mom and dad gave us a really strong foundation of faith, love one another, respect one another, hang with good people. They're the same principles that I picked up. My dad, who we had dinner with last night, wonderful guy, 94, a former Marine, it was disciplinarian. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and my dad communicated, so to speak, with us a couple of times. I'd get the belt across the butt or whatever. So his way of teaching us right and wrong was different than how I evolved. There were certain times I was probably a little more rough with the kids growing up, Luke and Joey. I would never call it abuse, more rough than I wanted to be with them, just to get them to pay attention.
I think that I would find that common in the discussions. It's one of those things we never talk about, is that, hey, we were all brought up with a little bit rougher. I definitely got the wooden spoon once or twice.
Oh yeah.
In that
I went to Catholic school my whole life. And as I said, dad was a disciplinarian and coaches. I remember I got a ball thrown at my head one time in practice because I was shooting left-handed jump shots, hooks, and we were just messing around warming up. And my coach yelled, "Can you make every shot right-handed?" Which was my dominant hand. I said, "No." He said, "What the heck are you shooting left-handed for?" He threw, "Get out of here." I went home. I told my dad, said, "Good, shoot with your right hand." Now today, parents would be in lawsuits. The coach threw a ball. The coach he didn't mean to hurt me. He wanted me to get better, and that was just a way of dealing with that. And I appreciate. I'm still friends with this coach. He's had a tremendous Division I career. Yeah, and I think it's that respect thing. You just learn it differently. I remember one day, my mom told me to cut the grass, and I didn't want to do it because I said my brothers can do it. My dad had a particular way; he loved the grass, and we couldn't even play on it. It was like a golf course. He had to cut it and bag it and everything else. And I wanted to go to play swim at my buddy's house. I was probably like 13, 14, just going into high school. And I was a punk and not proud of it. And what I realized is my mom came out and hung some clothes on the line, and I'm starting up the mower again. She's glaring at me and I'm glaring at her. And I start the mower, and real loud. She just said, "Cut the grass." And I replied with 3 single syllable words that rhymed with "cut the grass." And here's what I realized. When I had the lawnmower going, all that noise, right? I couldn't hear myself. So my mom ran over. I don't think her feet touched the ground, shut the mower off. And, "How dare you ever talk to me that way?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Yeah." And then she delivered that line that we've all heard so many times: "Wait until your father gets home." And I did. So I learned 2 lessons there, right? Don't disrespect your mom or anybody by saying stupid things like that. And the bigger lesson is, if you take the metaphor of that as fathers, if we just focus on fathers, every day you're in that lawnmower of life, man. You're pushing it. You're going to work. You're dealing with financial stress or whatever, relationship stress and business and jobs and COVID, and you can't hear yourself. That's why one of the principles, Jay, that I work into Jackrabbit as well, the 5 principles, is be still. Again, so Lizzie's type A in college: be still, get away, resettle. Fathers out there in the world doing great things for your family and yourself, back off a little bit. Prayer, journal, meditation, breathing exercise, walks in nature. I love to paddleboard down at the beach. I just go out there in the morning at like 7 o'clock and just settle, so then you can come back and step into your roles.
Jackrabbit, be still is 1.
Yep.
What are the other 4?
Develop vision. That's why we call it Jackrabbit, because the Jackrabbit has really good vision. Its eyes are back on its head and high up, so it has a full awareness. So develop vision, be still, seek support, and be support. That's a 2-sided principle. Know thyself, as Socrates said. Evolve. Undergo continuous and gradual growth. And it was interesting. I watched the U.S. Open last week. Serena Williams made that great run at her age. And, she just got a lot of attention when she finally was defeated after valiantly striving to win that match. Somebody said, "What are you going to do now?" And she said, "I'm just going to evolve. I'm just going to evolve." And that's it. Undergo continuous and gradual growth. And that's what we do as dads. And that's what we do as tennis players. And that's what we do as, whatever back to life is my theme in my podcast and the book. Every day you're gifted coming back to life.
Right.
And the really 2 questions is, what are you up to creating for yourself, and how are you going about doing it? They're 2 powerful questions. And for fathers what are you up to creating for your family? What are you up to creating in your relationships? What are you up to creating in financially with some material assets and things? And then how are you doing it? How are you thinking? How are you behaving? How are you leading with love? How are you vulnerable? How are you forgiving? What are the values that you really appreciate as a father? I'd write them down. I would encourage all the fathers listening, just grab a piece of paper and say, "These are the values that I believe are of a good father." And then give them a score, 1 to 10. How you doing with them? And then where anything's low, just put a column called actions and say, what could I do this week? What will I do? What can I commit to doing to let me live more into that value of forgiveness or authenticity or it might be acceptance.
And I think to align this with the discussion about that generational element as well, that we need to take a look at not only our present selves, but also what lessons did we learn from the past? What did we see and inherit from our parents. You mentioned a lot of this disciplinarian idea,
Yep.
and even specifically the physical disciplinarian area,
Mm-hmm.
and how that has shaped you, and how it's coming out in the way that you're being a parent and in your parenting, and
Mm-hmm.
it's come through with your style, that you've
Mm-hmm.
decided, okay, they loved me in the best way that they knew how. This
Mm-hmm.
is what they understood for that. I'm leading from this other way, starting with the self-awareness and documenting, okay, these are the things that I saw. Do I want, not want? Right? Do I want this
Yeah.
value in my life? Do I not want it? How do I intentionally create that?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
What were the, so as your siblings, as your sibling circus, right? What were some of the things that you learned there that maybe helped you navigate having three kids?
With the siblings, we always said the eight of us and my mom and dad, we didn't get along all the time for sure.
Mm,
And we really loved one another and would stand up for one another.
yeah.
And I saw that in many different ways. We had all kinds of issues. We had car accidents, thankfully, nothing wrong. You get caught drinking early in the woods. A brother or two get caught smoking weed in their sock. And so we run through the whole gamut. Wasn't certainly perfect. And I think what my parents did is they gave us some good disciplined thoughts on that, more so about who do you want to be? Who do you really want to be? How do you want to continue to try to get better? We lost my brother-in-law. I only had one sister, and he just passed in May a couple of months ago.
Mm,
And he would always say, "I just try to get better every day." To
mm,
his kids, three boys and a girl, try to get better. That was his message, and I
yeah.
think that's one for us as fathers. Just every day, try to get better.
Yeah.
I have a
100%.
question. I have a question I asked my kids. I know you and I chatted about it a little bit, and it's that. How do I heighten my awareness about being a good dad? You got to ask them that question. So I don't know if you want to go there now or
Yeah. Let's rock out. Let's do it.
yeah, yeah. So I just asked them, how can I be a better dad? What can I do to be a better dad? And I've
Yeah.
probably been asking them that now for maybe 7 years. So Luke's 28, Joey's 26. I didn't do that when I was younger because I thought I'm dad and I know how to do it. And then you get to that point where if you really want to be a better dad, you better ask the people who call you
Right.
dad.
Yeah. I think that's a very, for the fatherhood aspect, for the husband aspect, for the spouse aspect, just
Yeah.
saying, hey, how can I show up in a bigger, better way for you? And just opening up that honest conversation. And then I think the critical piece
Mm-hmm.
is being receptive to the feedback,
Oh, yeah,
and
always.
understanding that those people are giving you the answer in the best way that they know how, that they are answering your question as earnestly as they can. We're all
Mm-hmm.
doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And what a great way to, what a great habit to adopt. What a
Yeah.
great intention
Yeah.
to set.
Yeah. And you got to watch when you ask the question, you watch their answer because some may say, "Oh, give me $100 and let me stay over at my friend's house on a school night." And then you might go, "I don't know about that. That's not going
Yes.
to make me a better dad."
Yeah. It certainly isn't a let them do what they want to do. It's,
Well said, Jay. Well said.
yes. So, Danny, if folks wanted to know more about you, where could they find you?
Oh, thanks. My website is dannybader.com, and they could find out a lot about my speaking and my books. And then I've got social media presence, YouTube. I've got a tremendous bunch of videos on there, and Instagram, some reels, and Facebook as well. So they could
Love it.
just do a quick look. All those, if they go to the website, there's all links to take you out to that social media.
Love it. And your
Yeah.
pod is Back to Life?
Podcast is called Back to Life.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome. Danny,
Yeah.
thanks so much.
Jay, thank you, buddy. All the best.
Cheers. Hey, Feel Good Fathers, hit that like button to let YouTube know that you liked this video. Comment below with your thoughts and reactions to this interview. I really want to hear what you have to say. Now, as a personal brand strategist, I hear all the time about coaches, trainers, speakers, and authors doing the right thing, but at the wrong time. We specialize in helping brand builders have more impact, more credibility and clarity, and developing an overall brand strategy. When you work with Brand Builders Group, we'll help you do the right thing at the right time. Request a free brand call below. There's a link in the description. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll get updates when the new episodes are launched, and it really helps out the community and the channel. We'll see you next time.